Prince Harry thought the meeting would be painful, but manageable. He expected old wounds, careful language, perhaps even another cold reminder of distance. What he did not expect was the sentence that made the room fall silent. The executors had confirmed William would inherit Diana's private collection. In that instant, the past was no longer memory. It became power, possession, and heartbreak. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry arrived at Kensington Palace with his jaw tight, believing he had been summoned for routine archival arrangements. Kensington Palace, the London residence tied to Diana and her sons, mattered because every room carried echoes of the life Harry and William had shared before grief split them. The executors, the people legally responsible for inheritance instructions, sat across from him with folders arranged neatly. William sat nearby without reaching for the papers. He knew this meeting would not be ordinary, because Diana's private collection was not a cold royal archive. It held letters, jewelry, keepsakes, notes, and family items that carried the warmth of a mother the monarchy could never fully contain. When the confirmation came, it came cleanly, without drama. William would inherit the collection. Harry would not. Harry's face changed before anyone spoke again. He gripped the edge of the chair, not in anger at first, but in disbelief, as though the words had reached him slower than the pain. William watched his brother absorb the sentence, and the prince understood the cruelty of the moment. This was not victory. This was a burden handed to him in front of the one person most likely to feel betrayed by it. Harry had lost his mother, and now her private world seemed beyond his hands. A sealed inventory page slid apart from the rest. The lead executor placed one palm over it and said Charles had to be informed before that section could be discussed. The king's name changed the air. Charles was not in the room, yet his shadow fell over every face, because anything tied to Diana still carried pain he could never escape. Harry noticed the page. William noticed it too. One annotation beside Diana's name made William lean closer. It pointed to an earlier review, triggered after a disagreement between the brothers, and suddenly the decision no longer felt fresh. Harry rose without shaking anyone's hand. William looked back at the list and saw one item missing. But before Harry could understand what had been taken from him, the palace had to face the people who stood at the center of Diana's final legacy. This was not only about objects locked inside royal storage. It was about two boys who once walked behind the same coffin and grew into men carrying the same grief in opposite directions. For William, Diana's collection represented duty, continuity, and protection. For Harry, it represented memory, closeness, and the last private thread to the mother he felt the palace had already taken once. William sat alone with the inventory spread before him, and every line seemed to breathe. The inventory, a formal list of personal items kept for legal record, mattered because it turned memories into named possessions, and named possessions into authority. He recognized a bracelet Diana had once worn without ceremony, a birthday note written in her quick hand, and a small box she had kept near her desk. The prince did not touch the page at first. He only stared, as though the paper itself might accuse him. Harry paced behind a closed door, unable to accept that his mother's most personal belongings were now being handled as dynastic property. Dynastic property meant items tied not only to a person, but to a royal bloodline, and that distinction cut deep because it made Diana's private world feel absorbed by the institution that had once wounded her. Harry stopped near the table, then turned again, restless and wounded. He was not asking for a crown, he was asking for closeness. William felt the trap closing around him. If he reached out, Harry might hear pity. If he stayed silent, his brother would hear betrayal. The prince knew the documents had already placed the collection in his hands, and that fact made every word dangerous. He wanted to say that protecting Diana's memory was not the same as keeping it from Harry, but even in his own mind, the sentence sounded too polished, too palace-shaped, too late. Harry's grief sharpened because the silence around him felt planned. He imagined the palace expecting him to lower his eyes, accept the terms, and walk away grateful for whatever access might be offered later. That expectation burned. He had spent years fighting the feeling that he had become a guest in his own family, and now Diana's belongings seemed to confirm the fear he had never fully escaped. Charles received the file privately and did not rage. He set it down as if it had weight beyond paper. The king understood that Diana's name still carried power, because she remained the emotional center of wounds the monarchy could not close. Camilla watched his reaction and sensed the danger at once. The queen consort knew Diana could still awaken loyalties, resentments, and public sympathy with one mention. William finally asked why Harry had not been told earlier. The answer was quiet, careful, and devastating. Because behind the executor's confirmation stood a single incident. One private clash that turned Diana's collection from a family memory into a royal decision. Every royal crisis has a beginning, the palace tries to rename as procedure. This one began with a box. Not a crown, not a throne, not a state document, but a small private keepsake box linked to Diana. The moment it was opened at Windsor after a memorial dinner, the family crossed a line. And from that night forward, nothing about the collection was innocent. Harry had asked to see the box after a private Windsor memorial dinner held in Diana's honor, and the request carried more pain than anyone expected. Windsor, one of the royal family's most important residences, mattered because private family moments there often sat dangerously close to royal duty. The memorial dinner mattered because it was meant to honor Diana quietly, away from cameras and speeches, giving her sons a rare chance to remember her as a mother, not a symbol. Harry believed the box held letters, childhood mementos, and small personal traces that belonged to memory before they belonged to law. William objected before the lid could be lifted. The prince knew the box had not been formally catalogued, which meant its contents had not yet been recorded by the executors responsible for Diana's estate. Formal cataloging, in plain terms, is the process of listing personal items so ownership, access, and preservation can be controlled. William feared that opening the box without approval would turn a private moment into a dispute over who had the right to touch Diana's past. Harry heard caution, but felt rejection. He looked at his brother and saw not protection, but a barrier. In that moment, William was no longer only the older brother who had shared the same loss. He became the future king, standing between Harry and the mother both of them had lost. The wound opened fast. Harry did not want permission. He wanted closeness. He wanted one moment where Diana's memory did not require palace language. William felt the force of that pain and still refused to step aside. The prince believed Harry's request carried emotion without restraint, and he feared the box could become another battlefield beyond the palace walls. A courtier later recorded in a confidential written account that Harry placed his hand on the keepsake box and said he would not be treated as a visitor to Diana's life. That sentence did not stay in the room. It moved quietly upward. That confrontation triggered a confidential review of Diana's private collection. A confidential review means a private examination of records and rights before a final decision is made, and this one changed everything. The executors later concluded that one heir needed legal authority to protect the archive. By the time Harry learned the review had happened, the matter had moved beyond brotherly pain, and once grief became paperwork, the next meeting could not remain calm for long. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with a door closing. Harry stood across from William in a private room with no cameras, no aides at the table, and no public language to hide behind. Between them lay Diana's inventory, thin sheets of paper carrying the weight of a lifetime. Then Harry asked the question William feared most. Why him? Harry had demanded this meeting after the executor session, and he refused to speak through courtiers or formal channels. Courtiers, the senior palace aides who manage royal schedules and private messages, mattered here because they often softened conflict before it reached the family itself. Harry wanted no softened words. He wanted William to hear the pain directly, because Diana's collection had stopped being a legal matter the moment his brother's name appeared above his own. William agreed only in private, and that choice revealed his fear. The prince knew another layer of palace management would make the conversation colder, and outside interpretation would turn grief into strategy. He looked at Harry and understood that the room held more than disagreement. It held years of distance, old resentment, and the unbearable question of whether one son had been trusted more than the other with their mother's private world. Harry's voice stayed low, but every word struck hard. He accused William of accepting the collection too easily, of standing quietly while Diana's most personal belongings moved into his authority. The Duke said the decision made him feel erased, not from history, but from the small, private corners of his mother's life. He was not fighting for jewels alone. He was fighting against the feeling that the palace had turned him into a visitor again. William absorbed the accusation with controlled pain. The prince told Harry that inheritance was not victory, and protecting Diana's memory was not the same as owning her. He said the collection carried responsibility because every letter, every keepsake, every private note could be misunderstood, exploited, or dragged into public pain. Yet even as he spoke, William knew the truth sounded cruel coming from the person who had received everything. Harry then asked the question that changed the room. Did William know about the confidential review after the Windsor keepsake incident? A confidential review, meaning a private legal examination before a final decision, mattered because it proved the inheritance had been shaped before Harry ever sat in front of the executors. William paused. That pause said more than denial could hide. William admitted he had been informed before the final confirmation, but insisted he never asked for Harry to be cut off from emotional access. Harry heard the distinction and rejected it. He stepped back from the table and said, access without authority was only permission, and permission could always be taken away. That accusation forced the palace to confront the hardest question of all: who truly held power over Diana's memory? The public would see two brothers. The palace saw something colder: legal control, family risk, and the explosive power of Diana's name. Behind closed doors, the executors were not deciding who loved her more. They were deciding who could guard what remained without turning it into another royal war. And at the center of that decision stood Charles, silent, weary, and painfully aware. Charles read the legal summary alone, and the words seemed to take years from his face. The legal summary, a plain written explanation of rights, risks, and final recommendations, mattered because it turned family pain into a decision the monarchy could defend. The executors had concluded that Diana's private collection needed one controlling heir. If authority was divided, every letter, every note, every personal object could become a fresh dispute over access, display, and meaning. William's place as future king became the decisive fact. The future king, the heir expected to carry the monarchy into its next chapter, was treated as the safest guardian of a collection that belonged both to a mother's memory and to royal history. That mattered because Diana was not only a private figure to her sons. She remained a public symbol, and anything linked to her could shake the family far beyond one closed room. William inherited protection, but protection came dressed as power. Charles set the file down and did not speak for several seconds. The king understood what the decision would do to Harry. It might steady the institution, but it would cut into a son already convinced the palace had placed walls around his grief. Charles knew the monarchy could survive a legal challenge more easily than it could survive another emotional war over Diana. That was the truth no one wanted to say aloud. Camilla sat with Charles after the briefing, uneasy in a way she could not hide. The queen consort understood Diana's legacy still commanded a loyalty no palace plan could control. She had seen it before. A single mention of Diana's name could awaken old sympathy, old anger, and old comparisons. Camilla looked at the king and knew this was not merely about what William would receive. It was about what Harry would feel had been denied. One executor revealed through a documented account prepared for the palace that Diana had marked certain items as not for public use. That phrase changed everything. It meant some letters and keepsakes were too private for display, too sensitive for casual handling, and too emotionally dangerous for divided control. A palace advisor warned Charles that if Harry challenged the decision publicly, the monarchy would face another reckoning centered on Diana. Charles finally authorized a limited offer of private viewing access for Harry. The king hoped it would soften the blow, but he knew kindness delivered after exclusion could feel like control. Because when Harry received the palace's compromise, it did not soothe the wound. It proved the wound was real. The first consequence came quietly. No announcement, no statement. Just a folder sent through formal channels, listing what Harry could view, what he could request, and what he could never remove. The language was polite, but the meaning was brutal. Diana's collection was close enough for him to see, but no longer close enough for him to hold. Harry opened the folder at a table and read every line as if each one had been placed there to remind him of distance. Formal channels, meaning the official route used for sensitive royal messages, mattered because they removed warmth from the moment. The access terms allowed supervised private viewing of selected items, but they confirmed that William retained inheritance authority over the collection. That detail mattered because authority was the difference between being welcomed and being allowed. Meghan watched him from across the room, and her silence carried its own pain. She understood that this was not only a legal blow, it was childhood grief returning in adult language, dressed in careful words and polite limits. Harry read that he could request access but not remove items. He could view certain belongings, but not control them. The palace called the arrangement respectful preservation, meaning a protected way to guard private objects for the future. Yet the phrase felt cold because it placed Diana's memory behind rules. Harry set the document down. Then he covered his face with both hands. Meghan did not interrupt him, because she knew this wound was older than the folder, older than the executors, older than the latest decision. Harry had spent years trying to explain what it felt like to lose his mother under the weight of royal expectation. Now the same system seemed to be telling him that even her private notes required permission. A single line made him look back sharply. The keepsake box from the Windsor incident had been marked under restricted access. Restricted access meant only certain people could see an item, and only under approved conditions. Harry understood the message immediately. The moment William stopped that box from being opened had not faded into family tension. It had shaped the legal path that followed. It had become evidence. It had become control. Meghan saw his expression harden, and knew he had found something worse than refusal. A handwritten note from Diana was referenced in the terms, but not copied. Harry stared at the words and realized he would have to ask William's side of the family to read something written by his own mother. That thought cut deeper than the decision itself. Harry did not call the press. He did not issue a challenge. Instead, he made one unexpected request. He wanted to see William alone, without executors, lawyers, or palace walls between them. And in that request, the story shifted from inheritance to something far more fragile: brotherhood. The turning point came not in a palace office, but in a private sitting room, where the brothers finally ran out of arguments. No executors, no advisors, no carefully prepared phrases. Just William, Harry, and Diana's name resting between them like a third presence. For the first time since the confirmation, neither man spoke as a prince. They spoke as sons. William chose the smaller room because size mattered now. A formal office would have made the meeting feel controlled, and control was exactly what Harry had come to resent. The prince understood that Diana's memory could not survive another conversation shaped by palace process. A private sitting room, meaning a family space used for personal talks rather than official meetings, allowed the brothers to face the pain without turning every sentence into a record. Harry arrived guarded, but quieter than before. He carried no papers, no statement, and no list of demands. That absence mattered because the Duke had spent the last days surrounded by documents that told him what he could not hold. Now he wanted to speak without paper between them. William watched him sit down and knew his brother had not come to surrender. Harry had come because anger had finally run into grief. Harry looked at William and said the decision made him feel as if he had lost Diana twice. First as a boy, when the world watched him walk through pain he did not understand. Then again as a man, when the collection that carried her private voice had moved into his brother's authority. The words landed heavily. William did not interrupt. The prince could hear the wound beneath them, and for once, he did not try to defend the institution before answering the brother in front of him. William admitted the inheritance felt unbearable. He told Harry that every item in Diana's collection reminded him not of privilege, but of responsibility. The prince said being trusted with their mother's memory now felt like it might cost him the only person who truly understood what losing her had meant. Harry looked away, but he listened. That mattered. For the first time, William's pain did not sound like palace language. It sounded human. William then opened a small case and placed one item between them. It was a private note from Diana, one she had written about wanting both boys to remain connected no matter what life placed between them. A private note, in plain terms, meant words meant for family eyes, not public history. Harry did not take it. He read it slowly, and the anger in his face gave way to grief no legal ruling could repair. Harry accepted only one truth that day. The collection might belong to William, but Diana's love could not be inherited by only one son. By the time the palace prepared its response, the world outside had already turned Diana's collection into a national reckoning. When the story broke, it did not feel like another royal dispute. It felt like Britain had been pulled back to the old wound it never fully healed. Diana's name appeared again in bold letters, and suddenly every conversation became personal. People were not debating inventory. They were debating love, loyalty, inheritance, and whether a mother's memory could ever be divided by rank. The palace issued a restrained statement before the noise could outrun control. The statement, a formal message released to shape public understanding, confirmed that Diana's private collection would be preserved under William's authority, with private access arrangements handled respectfully. That careful language mattered because the monarchy wanted calm, but calm could not hide the human cost. The words sounded polished. The wound beneath them sounded raw. Harry watched the coverage in silence, and the silence said more than anger could. The Duke saw his private devastation become a national spectacle, and that hurt, because Diana's memory had always drawn the world close to his pain. He had wanted one honest conversation about a mother. Instead, he now watched commentators weigh his grief against William's duty, as if love could be measured by royal order. William saw the same headlines and felt the pressure tighten around him. The prince had become the guardian of Diana's private collection, but the public language made him look like the winner of something no son should want to win. Guardian, in this moment, meant the person trusted to protect and control important personal items. Yet William knew protection could look like possession when viewed through Harry's eyes. That truth followed him through every sentence printed under his name. One newspaper front page captured the country's mood with brutal simplicity. A split image of the brothers ran across the page under the headline, "Diana's Legacy Divided." The phrase struck because it reduced the whole crisis to one painful truth. William stood for continuity. Harry stood for exclusion. Diana stood between them again, beloved by both, claimed by neither, and still powerful enough to shake the monarchy from beyond the grave. Outside Kensington Palace, a small crowd gathered with flowers and handwritten notes. Kensington Palace mattered because it remained tied to Diana's life and to the childhood of her sons, making it the natural place for public feeling to land. One note read, "She belonged to both of them." That single sentence moved faster than any official statement. It said what the palace could not say without admitting the decision had wounded more than one person. Charles listened as advisors briefed him on the reaction, and the king understood the danger. He would not reverse the decision, but he knew the monarchy had to give the moment emotional meaning before it hardened into bitterness. William would remain the legal guardian. Harry would remain wounded. Diana would remain the name no palace statement could control. And so the story moved toward its final verdict, not in law, but in what this inheritance revealed about the family Diana left behind. In the end, the collection did not simply pass from one generation to the next. It exposed everything the monarchy still struggles to contain: grief, rank, memory, and the impossible shadow of Diana. Harry was devastated. William was burdened. Charles was reminded that even time cannot silence certain wounds. And the palace learned that some inheritances do not crown a person. They test them. William inherited Diana's private collection because the executors placed preservation, continuity, and future royal responsibility above shared emotional control. The executors, meaning the people legally trusted to carry out inheritance decisions, had reached a final position that no emotion could easily undo. That mattered because Diana's belongings were not ordinary family items. They carried public meaning, private pain, and the power to reopen wounds the monarchy had spent years trying to seal. Harry did not receive authority over the collection, and that truth settled into him slowly. The Duke was granted private access to selected personal items, but access was not ownership, and memory without possession still felt like distance. Private access, in plain terms, meant he could view certain belongings under agreed conditions, but he could not control where they went or how they were protected. Harry understood the decision could not be undone, yet he refused to let paperwork define his bond with Diana. William accepted the collection without triumph. The prince knew there was no victory in receiving what had hurt his brother so deeply. To him, Diana's letters, keepsakes, jewelry, and handwritten notes had become a sacred duty, not a prize. He would guard them as the future king, but he would also carry the cost of that guardianship as a brother. Every item would remind him that inheritance can protect history while still breaking hearts. Charles recognized the monarchy had survived the crisis legally, but not untouched. The king understood that Diana's presence still governed the family in ways no royal order could command. A royal order, meaning an official instruction carrying palace authority, could settle ownership, but it could not settle grief. Charles saw the truth clearly now. The palace could control the collection, but it could never control what Diana still meant to Harry, William, or the public. The hidden meaning became impossible to deny. Diana's belongings were never just objects. They were symbols of trust, pain, love, and rank. William became the guardian of her private collection. Harry became the living proof that grief cannot be excluded by procedure. And the monarchy was forced to admit that legacy is not only inherited, it is endured. There is no further mystery left to solve. Diana's collection went to William, Harry's heartbreak became undeniable, and the monarchy walked away with a victory that felt less like power than penance. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.